Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning for this morning's webinar. I'm really pleased to be part of today's event. We're going to do some introductions in a second, but we'll just give it a couple of seconds for people to start joining. You are here to learn about getting procurement ready for Solihull providers and also about cyber security. And we've got some great presentations also from my colleague John and from Karen from the Federation of Small Businesses as well. So John, on behalf of Solihull Council, do you want to do a quick open and introduction for us before we head into presentations?
Thanks, Jill. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar, Get Procurement Ready and Stay Cyber Resilient. My name's John Lander, and I'm part of the Economic Development team at Solihull Council, alongside my colleagues Claire Rudge this morning. Today's session forms part of our business support programme for local SMEs and is delivered in partnership for Go for Growth and the West Midlands Cyber Resilience Centre, the Federation of Small Business, Solihull Chamber of Commerce, and the Birmingham and Solihull Growth Hub. The webinar will highlight the fully funded Go for Growth programme, supporting businesses and the voluntary sector to build capacity and confidence to bid for public sector contracts, alongside practical guidance on strengthening cyber resilience. This session is being recorded and the slides will be shared after the event. I'll now hand you back to Jill from Go for Growth to introduce the session.
Thank you, John. Thank you. Yeah, so we are going to try and cover a couple of main agenda points today. So I'm going to chat you through in about 20-30 minutes some top tips on getting procurement ready if you're seeking to work for the public sector. Michelle will then talk us through cyber security and cyber resilience. We'll hear also from the Chambers of Commerce, and we'll hear from the Growth Hub and from the Federation of Small Businesses. So today is really designed all about supporting micro, small and medium enterprises or the voluntary sector organisations. I'm just going to share my screen, so give me 1 second. If anyone from our panel can just give me a thumbs up to let me know that you can see the slides. Okay. Perfect. So I'm going to kick off talking about getting procurement ready. My name is Gillian Askew. I'm one of 3 co-founding directors of a social enterprise called Go for Growth. And our job effectively on a fully funded basis, and we are funded by Solihull Council as one of our partners on a fully funded basis, our job really is to try and support the marketplace to be able to build their knowledge, skills, confidence in order to take part in relevant public sector opportunities, whether that's a grant funding opportunity or a commission service which would go through a bid or a tender. So what we're trying to do is connect the business market and the voluntary sector market with the public sector. And there are no closed doors in Go for Growth. So anybody can come to Go for Growth for help at any time. But unsurprisingly, we are supporting lots of micro and smaller organisations and voluntary sector organisations where that support is generally most needed. And we're trying to help providers to deliver sustainable growth. So what we want to help you with is to find those opportunities that maintain your growth over the long term, so that you can create more employment opportunities, so that you can create more wealth in your local area, in your communities, etc. So it's not just about finding one opportunity and converting that, but actually doing that over the longer term as well. And that means we're focused on helping build capability, but also capacity. So having access to knowledge, skills and resources to build that confidence to be able to take part in those opportunities that are right and relevant for your organisation in your market. And we do that through an evidence-based action research programme, if you like. So effectively, we ask the marketplace to tell us what those barriers to entry and growth are. What are you struggling with? What are you finding most difficult? And how can we help you remove those barriers so that you can take part in those opportunities and that you can go on to win and secure those opportunities over that longer term? We are fully funded, so I'll talk about this a number of times. What that means is that you can access the support from Go for Growth, and our contact details are in the slide deck. But you can contact us and you can use all of our resources, you can tap into our team, and all of that is free at point of use. So there are no charges from Go for Growth out to the marketplace. I am going to try and whiz through quite a lot of information in the next sort of 30 minutes. And so one of the things I would say is it is quite a quick canter through. If anybody wants to have a chat with me or my colleagues in Go for Growth or get in touch with us just for some more information, please feel free to do so. We would love to chat to you after the event. So what do we try and do? So we are focusing on a number of areas. So understanding that public sector process and how you can take part. And lots of organisations, around about 70–80% of businesses and voluntary sector providers that we're working with tell us that actually one of the hardest things is finding those opportunities that are right and relevant for those businesses in the first place. So we can help you do that, and we can help you do that in a number of ways. Understanding what the procurement portals are or the digital platforms where these opportunities are being advertised, and working through how to use those portals. We can also search for those opportunities on your behalf as well. So we can actually try and help you find those opportunities that are most relevant to your business. Help you understand process and policy, what the public sector is really looking for, and then thinking about those basic tools that you need in your toolkit for any funding application, whether that's a grant funding application or a contract. And there are two really big agenda in the public sector around social impact through spending taxpayers' money and also protecting the environment, and underneath that very specifically reducing carbon. And again, we can help your organisation figure out what that means to you in a proportionate and relevant way, and how to reflect that in either a grant funding application if they're asking for it, or in a contract, a tender application where the public sector are asking about those things. And there's lots of ways to access that support, actually. So we want to try and make it as personalised as possible so it's relevant to your business. And you can come to us to events like we've got today. You can come for training or guidance. We've got delivered workshops that are live and virtual. We've got self-paced study online courses. You can come to webinars like this. You can also have one-to-one coaching through our team. And we also have a self-service platform which allows you to do a bit of a gap analysis to see where you are and what your understanding and knowledge of the public sector looks like. And just to put some sense around that in terms of impact, so we think the support that we're delivering is working, in that we're seeing from those organisations that we are talking to a 70% increase in engagement with competitions in the first place. So where a number of businesses might have said, actually, this feels like it's in the too difficult space, I'm not going to have a go, and now having a go. And that's translating into a 30% uplift in contracts awards to micro, small and medium enterprises and voluntary community and social enterprises as well. And we estimate that around 1 in 3 of those wins is a first-time bidder that's been supported by Go for Growth. So if you're feeling like, actually, this just all might be too complicated, bureaucratic, or too difficult, please do give us a shout, because we are here and happy to try and help. So I mentioned there are 2 main funding routes. I've got some top tips on grant funding today, but we are focusing a little bit on commission services contracts. They are bids and tenders, typically, where you would go through a competitive process to be awarded onto a contract at the end of it. But those 2 are the most typical funding routes through public sector. So if you think about grant top tips to start with, grant funding, I did a series of roadshows probably a couple of years ago now with grant funders. And it was really interesting, some of the advice I gave. I'm not going to talk through everything on the screen, but there were some really helpful elements, I think, just to pull out. One of the things that grant funders were saying is that they often get multiple organisations offering similar type of projects. And so the differentiation for funders if you can help funders understand the gap that you're trying to fill, why your project is different, who is out there locally doing something that you can either work with or tap into or add to, it can be really useful. Funders also consider balance when commissioning grants. So that balance between ongoing funding for continued services, but also the provision of new services will be one of those balancing acts that funders are looking at. And for that reason, the sustained nature of grants can be challenging for some organisations. Of course, if you are a sole trader or a limited company, then your access to grants will be lower than if you are a charity, a not-for-profit or a social enterprise. So your access route into grant funding will be different depending on the type of business that you are. Be clear on your finances was one of the main messages on grant funding. So have a budget, know where you'll spend the money, be able to talk about the value for money per beneficiary and what that really means. Roadshow funders, when we were chatting, they were keen to reassure that they are clear that things might change during the life of a grant. So communication is often really key. What are the outcomes that you're trying to achieve through that grant funding application, and how will that be progressed during the life of the grant funding period? You won't necessarily be held to account for each £1 of where that goes precisely, but it will be outcomes driven. So it's really important to think about what you're trying to achieve and how you achieve it. And in a similar way for contracts and bids, if you're asked for attachments or crucial information, make sure that you attach all of those things while you're going through your grant funding application. One of the main differences, however, is in a bid or a tender situation, the contracting authority, the people that you are bidding to, the only method really of talking to them is through a clarification question process, and I'll talk more about that in a second. Whereas a grant funding application actually is probably a more versatile and flexible process in being able to talk to funders to clarify what the funding is about. So they are very different environments due to the regulations, and especially if we are running a procurement that's governed by the procurement legislation, then there are some regulated rules that we have to work around. Grant funding has much more flexibility embedded into it. I can see we've got a couple of things in the chat. I'm just going to make sure we haven't got, nobody can not hear me or anything, so that's okay. That's all good. So if we start talking about grants and tenders, there are thresholds at play, and the threshold in a public sector procurement capacity, what that means is if a total contract value is over a certain level, then it is governed by the procurement legislation that exists called the Procurement Act 2023. That came into force on the 24th of February last year. So we're just about at the first birthday of the new legislation. Prior to that, it was European legislation, the Public Contract Regulations of 2015. So when I send the slide deck out, I will send with it the thresholds that are in place. But for goods and services, the current threshold, which is total contract value, is 207,720, including VAT. And that's effective from the 1st of January 2026. And so typically in anything that's being competed, where you are applying to join the contract, these will be the types of stages that you will see. So there'll be an advertisement of the opportunity that will be either on the relevant procurement portal that the specific public sector organisation uses, or Contracts Finder or Find a Tender service. The Find a Tender service is also known as the central digital platform, and it's really a search engine for above threshold opportunities. Contracts Finder is also a search engine hosted by the government for lower value opportunities. The two will merge in October 2026, so there will be just one platform for finding opportunities, and they will cover all of England. There are other portals for Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland. Once that procurement is out there and advertised, you have a period of clarifications, and it's a time-sensitive process, but that's the opportunity to ask any questions or make sure that if you need any points of clarity that you've been able to ask the hosting authority for those points of clarity. But it does close. So it's worth looking at those key dates. Of course, once you've written your bid, you'll submit it and then it will go into the scoring process. At the end of the scoring process, there's something called an intent to award. And that's when if it's a specific competition with winners and losers, that's when everybody is notified of their outcome and the intent to award is then advertised. If it's above threshold, there's then something called a standstill period, where effectively a contract award notice is published and bidders have the opportunity to say, actually, I disagree with that result on a matter of, I think the process hasn't been run correctly, not just that we don't like the result. In that standstill period, you can write to the contracting authority and challenge the outcome. If there's no challenge, then it will go to award and the contract then becomes live. So those are the standard processes that we have. And what you'll see under there is a bit more detail. So we have the invitation to tender, and that will have all of the information that you need in it. At the front end of really any public procurement process, even if it's not over that threshold, there'll be something called the procurement specific questionnaire where it asks lots of information about your business, who you are, where you are, how big you are, what your insurances are, etc., etc. Then we have something called the specification, and almost certainly everybody knows what the specification is. It does exactly what it says on the tin, but it is one of the most important documents in any public procurement because it describes what the hosting organisation is trying to buy and what's important to them. So when we coach on bid skills, what we say is if you read through the specification, what you can use that spec for is to write down and make a note of all the bits that you can deliver. You can make a note of any gaps that you might have. You can use that to make a note of any questions that you might have. And you can also use that to make a note of where you've got evidence to be able to say, we do this and let me show you how we do this, or we will do it and let me show you how we will do it. Alongside the specification, we have the evaluation criteria. So in public sector, what we need to do is make sure that we tell everybody how we're going to award this work or this project or this contract. So how will it be scored? How will I win it? So the evaluation criteria is also really important because it gives us that definition of what do we need to do in order to be successful. And some of the questions that we're being asked might have a weighting against them. And I'll show you that on a slide where I bring this to life a little bit more practically. But it will show you what's most important to that organisation. And that will be in those quality or technical questions. And you will also have a pricing section. It's not true anymore that every bid pricing is scored. It is normal that pricing will be scored, but you will see a weighting at the front end between quality and commercial, quality and pricing, or technical and pricing. And that might be 70% quality, 30% cost, or you might have 50% quality, 20% social value, 30% price, that kind of thing. But all of that will be really clear. So you will know as a bidder what it is that this is all going to be awarded and what's really important. Of course, in any procurement, there will be a set of terms and conditions. And at the end of any procurement, whether you're successful or unsuccessful, there is a feedback process. It is worth noting that above those regulatory thresholds, the feedback is set in law. So you must get detailed feedback through something called an assessment summary. Underneath that threshold, it is down to the particular organisation that is putting the contract out as to whether they give detailed feedback underneath threshold. So you should get who is the winner, what your score was, what their score was, and then we always encourage any public sector organisation to give as much feedback as possible. You'll notice that 2, 3, 5 and 6 are blue and underlined. There's a live link under there. So we did lunch and learn sessions, 20-minute sessions on each of those topics. So when those slides come out, if you click through to those, there'll be more information underneath them just to help further that understanding. But if we dive into the specification a bit more, and we, in our bid skills training, we go through this in even more detail, and we actually have some live evaluation sessions where we put our evaluators' hats on and we work through actually how we score something. But the specification is really crucial. It tells you what is trying to be bought and what's important and why those things are important. So it will tell you the background to the procurement, not just the stuff and things that are being purchased, but how long they want them over, how you might be measured and managed post-contract award, all of that stuff. So the specification is really important. And we can really use it to help us answer those quality questions. It's worth noting as well that in public procurement, you shouldn't be asked anything in quality questions or technical questions that's not in the specification. That's how intrinsically linked the specification is to the whole procurement. So the purpose of the quality questions are to test our ability as bidders to deliver that specification. That's effectively what it's trying to do. But as I said, we can use the specification at the outset to work out how much we match what's trying to be bought, how we might deliver it, what evidence we've got for our bid, and any gaps or questions that we might have. So the evaluation criteria, there are two types of criteria that's used: selection criteria and evaluation criteria. Selection criteria is that procurement specific questionnaire where it looks at you as a business, what your financial standing is, whether you've done this kind of thing before, whether you've got the right insurances, licenses, accreditations, where you are, who you are, etc. That's what the selection looks at. The evaluation is all about testing your ability to deliver this particular contract, and it's future focused. And what that means is, even if you're a startup and you've never done this before, or you might be diversifying into a new area, you have exactly the same opportunity to bid and secure that work as anybody that's been doing it for the last 100 years, because it is forward looking. It's saying, how will you do something if you are successful in winning this contract? And so you might already have been doing it, and then we can use evidence of previous activity, or you might be new to this, so we'll be evidencing how we will put that structure in place to be able to deliver it. The questions have normally got weightings against them. So if there are, and I'll show you on one of the slides, I've got 3 questions. You might have 100%, you might have 50% to one question and 2 lots of 25%, for example. That shows us that 50% question is the most important question to whoever the host organisation is. And so whilst we're not saying don't try as hard with those other questions, it can be really useful to help us know where to put our resources and where to really focus our effort, because we really want to score as high as we can on the highest weightings questions. There's something called a threshold question. So you might see in a procurement where it says you must score a minimum threshold of 30% or a score of 3 on this particular question in order to continue for the rest of your questions to be scored. Again, all of those instructions will always be really clear. So you'll always know what type of question it is and whether it is a precursor to carrying on or not. And this is just an example of an evaluation criteria. They will all look different. So this isn't the holy grail of all evaluation criteria, but this is typically what it might look like. So on the left-hand side, a score, the description of that score or the name of that score, and then an explanation of what that score is. And so, of course, we want to be at the top end of those scores as much as we can. So we want to be outstanding. And so we want to cover all the elements of the requirements with a high level of relevant and detailed information with clear evidence, and show that we've got a really good and coherent understanding of whatever the requirements are, and that our evaluators can't see any issues or weaknesses or omissions. So that evaluation criteria is saying to you, in order to score a 5, here's what we need to see in your answer to the question. And of course, at the bottom end, a score of 0 is we've not got a response. The response provided wasn't consistent with the requirements outlined within the question. But you can take a look at your answer and go, where do I think it sits with what you've written? And when we're answering questions, we talk about how to approach it. And I'll show you this on a real example on the next slide. But what we basically say is we look at a quality or a technical question and we break it down into the doing elements, the verb elements. So we're looking for the bits that it's actually asking us to evidence to them or to answer in the question. That second bullet point sounds so obvious, and forgive me, make sure you only answer the question. But it's really actually harder than it probably sounds, because we, as artisans, have a story that we want to tell. And we're very passionate about that story. And we believe our business can do this. And so, as an evaluator, there are many times where the narrative has been excellent, but it hasn't been relevant to the question. And so therefore, as excellent as it is, it actually hasn't scored any additional points because it's not relevant to the question. So one of the things that we've got to really focus on is making sure that we're only answering the question that we've been asked. And we should think about the so what all of the time. So if we're saying we're doing something, can we provide that so what? Can we provide the evidence of, I will do this and here is how, I have done this and here is how. And that's the way we try to think about it. There is a bit of a tip, and again, this will be really clear. Often there are things like word counts or page counts at play. They are really strict. So if you go over a word count, however many words go over that word count, the evaluator will never see it. And on a page count, there is usually a font size stipulation, and that's to make sure that everybody gets the same amount of space as each other. So if you get 2 sides of A4, it will likely say in font size Arial 12 or something like that. Again, please don't ignore those things, because you do run the risk of actually just being disqualified because you have put a non-compliant bid in. So, and the word count that you do get, we would always say, use it as wisely as possible. Don't repeat the question in there, and try to be as succinct as you can and stick with the real facts and the evidence. But let me show you this. So they're real questions from a real bid from a couple of years ago now, and this was in the social care, adult social care environment, and there are 3 questions. The first question, I've highlighted in yellow the verb elements. So how do we ensure that care plans are individually tailored, person-centred, meet the needs and outcomes of the person? How do we ensure those care plans are kept up to date? What are the measures in place to make sure people are involved in their care planning? And how do we link with partners to ensure needs are met? So 6 doing elements. We've got 600 words, no attachments allowed, and it has a weighting of 25%. So it's the most important question. So when we're putting our answer together, what we can almost do is tick off each of those 6 elements. Have I answered how care plans are individually tailored? Have I evidenced it? Have I answered how they're person-centred? Have I evidenced it? Etc., etc. So we can use the question and those verb elements and the specification, because it'll tell us what they want in care planning. It'll tell us what they mean by ensuring people are involved in that care planning and which partners they're working with. The specification is a real key to some of that information. We can use those things to tick off, have I answered all of that question? Have I given as much relevant evidence as I possibly can within the word count, and no more? And that's what we're looking for. So you can use that approach in any question, whether it's quality questions, social value questions, etc., to say, have I answered all of the question? And in one example of this, one of the answers on care plans, that question number 1 was, yes, we have care plans. That was the answer. And then on that evaluation criteria that I showed you, that would have scored a 0, because it was wholly inconsistent with the requirements of the question and the specification, and really failed to show any understanding of what was required. And that feels like an extreme example, but that was a real response to a real bid, to a real question. And so we can start to see, if we build it out and we plan it correctly, that we'll have the most chance at answering the question as possible. And I said before, social value and carbon are really important to the public sector. And I don't know if anyone's familiar with the Sustainable Development Goals. There are 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and it's part of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Developments, which all United Nations member states adopted in 2015. Effectively, the public sector in the United Kingdom is governed by something called the Public Services Act, which was assented to law in 2013 and actually went live in 2012 and went live in January 2013. And effectively what that's looking for is, for every pound of taxpayers' money that is being procured, we are looking for that to make the most social and environmental impact that it can. So thinking about how we create new jobs, create new skills, tackle climate change, how we reduce waste, how we increase supplier diversity, accessibility, innovation, resilience, all of those things. And it really reinforces the message that procurement is not just about the lowest price. It's not a fastest race to the bottom. There is a real drive in public sector to take a much broader view of value for money. From a procurement perspective, and we do courses and webinars dedicated to social value, the one key thing to remember is, and this is especially critical if you're in a social care environment, regardless of what your organisation does, which might be delivering lots of social value. If you're delivering support to live at home, everything you do is delivering social value. But in the procurement, for the contract of that, you will be asked about social value, and that will be looking at not your core services, but anything in addition. If you are successful in winning that contract, regardless of what you do as an organisation, what social value can you deliver in addition to what you're already doing? And that can often be confusing for bidders, especially in social care environments where everything they do is delivering social value. But it's always looking for that additionality in public sector. And in carbon, it can be a very polarizing topic in terms of, and we see that in governmental rhetoric across the wider global network, not just in the United Kingdom, but we do have a target in the UK. And we are looking to reduce emissions by 45% by 2030 and reach net zero by 2050. And this is all driven by trying to avert the worst impacts of climate change, helping us to preserve a livable planet and to keep global warming to less than 1.5 degrees hotter than it was in the late 1800s. And that's all part of the Paris Agreement. What you will see in bids, and at the minute the legislation says, if the contract value is above 5 million, the provider must have a carbon reduction plan. But we're seeing in public sector contract values much lower, 50,000, 60,000, even lower than that. Contracting authorities, especially where they've declared a climate emergency, are looking for carbon reduction plans as part of that procurement process. And so it's, I think, in Go for Growth viewpoint, what we do, and we talk about this all of the time with everything, even on carbon, we're thinking about what's relevant and proportionate to your business, what makes sense to you, and how can we use carbon reduction and the wider environmental requirements to help us actually do better business, to be more profitable and to grow. And there's lots of evidence around that suggests that actually good business is good business. So we can really help ourselves and our businesses by embracing things like carbon and the wider environment. And I'll just finish off before I hand over to my colleague Michelle with just some common pitfalls. Again, I'm not going to talk through all 10, but there were just 3 I wanted to pick out because we've talked about most of them. Number 3, caveating. If you're ever writing a bid and you're finding that you're having to say, well, if this happens, it will be this cost, or we'll do this, or if this scenario over here happens, then we'll do something else. Unless you've been specifically asked for different scenarios, my advice would be try not to caveat. It makes it very difficult for evaluators to score your bid. If you don't know or you can't decide something, it's probably worth asking a clarification question. So unless you've been asked to specifically, I would avoid caveating as much as possible. The other thing I would point out is assumptions, number 9. So don't assume that even if you're the incumbent, that your evaluator knows you, so therefore you don't need to write anything down. Evaluators have to leave their knowledge at the door, and you will only be scored on what you've written versus the question and the specification and the evaluation criteria. You're not compared to other bidders during that scoring process. You're compared to what you write down. So if you want your evaluator, whoever that is, to know something, tell them. And the other part of assumptions is if you're using technical language, don't assume that your evaluator will know what it means. So if you're using acronyms, at least once the first time you use that acronym, spell it out. A SME, for example, could be a small and medium-sized enterprise, but it could also be a subject matter expert. And what you don't want is evaluators to have to try and figure out what it is that you're saying to them. So if you're making assumptions, it's probably worth breaking that down somewhere in the bid so that you're explaining it. And that was such a whistle-stop tour on getting procurement ready. I mean, we've literally just scratched the surface, but these are our contact details in Go for Growth. So please do feel free to get in touch. With the slide deck, I'll send out our half-day bid skills workshop and our social value webinar that are both coming up in February and March as well. So if anybody wants to sign up to them, you can absolutely come along. Again, everything is free of charge, so please do feel free. And you can also book into our calendar if you want to have a cup of coffee and a chat with a human. We're always available to talk to everyone. So thank you for listening to me. I'll stop sharing my screen and hopefully everyone can see me. Let me just see what we've got in the Q&A. Well, Michelle, if you want to get ready. Yeah, so it's a really good question actually in the Q&A. Is running sessions or workshops virtually instead of in person seen as a benefit in regards to carbon reduction? Thinking accessibility, less impact retravel, renting spaces, etc. The quick answer is yes. It isn't necessarily always the priority for it. I think what most organisations, including Go for Growth, do is we try and work out what's best for the audience and what will give them the most opportunity to get the learning. But definitely it's a consideration from a time perspective, from an accessibility perspective, but also from an environmental perspective. I was just saying to our colleagues in SMBC this morning, we always ask after an event, what's your preference? Do you want it in person, blended or virtual? And overwhelmingly, it's virtual or blended. So I think you'll see a mixture of both. I'll stop speaking now. Michelle, do you want to pop your slides up? I'll hand over to you.
So hopefully now, again, if somebody could give me a thumbs up, you're able to see. Perfect. Thanks so much for that, Jill. And thank you for having me here today. Again, mine will be a little bit of a whistle-stop tour because I think we can go into all sorts of different areas when we start talking about cyber crime and cyber resilience. So my name is Michelle Owen. I'm a Serving Detective Inspector within the West Midlands Police, and I run the West Midlands Cyber Resilience Centre, which is essentially funded by the Home Office and led by policing. So although we are police-led, we are business-focused, and that's what we're here to do and to support you. And I'll tell you more about how we do that throughout the presentation. But why are we here? Why are we talking about cyber resilience, cyber crime? How does it all interlink with you and what you do in your roles? And the reality of it is cybercrime costs UK businesses absolutely significant sums of money year in, year out. And as you can imagine, that number just keeps growing. UK businesses face cyber attacks every 39 seconds. This time last year, it was around 44 seconds. But with the way technology is advancing and developing, it's just making it easier and easier. And 80% of cyber attacks start within the supply chain. And people quite often forget that, they lead into or supply some really significant companies sometimes, or you're within the supply chain of somebody else who supplies a significant organisation. And so we often see things like this. Recently, these are all ones that have been within the news, but we don't hear about the smaller ones, the ones that affect and quite often will completely take out a small organisation. I'm sure everybody saw all of the headlines. And this is what we're trying to do, is put things in place and support organisations to prevent you from being a victim to crimes of this nature. So what are the main threats that we see within our region? And we do tend to actually follow the national trend. Every now and then we'll get something crop up. But like I say, we follow the national trend. And there probably won't be much here that will be of a shock to anybody. Phishing is the number one method, has been for years, and I don't see that changing at all in the upcoming future. Business email compromise is one that we see regularly as well. And the reality of it is we use social media. And social media is one of those things that actually allows people to gather information about us, about our companies, about the things that we do, the places that we go, and use that information to specifically put together targeted phishing campaigns to you or your organisation. And to give you an idea as to how easy it can be, we had somebody join the Cyber Resilience Centre, and within 10 minutes of updating their LinkedIn profile, they had an email come through saying, welcome, I love my team, and I want you to go and buy lots of gift vouchers for me. I think it'd be a great way of giving something back to the employees. Can you come back to me and let me know? And I don't know what it meant, whether I trained him well or whether he knew me, but he realised that I probably hadn't sent that email. And so was able to get in touch and prevent it from happening. But that exact scenario happened to a young lady in another organisation in our region not too long ago. She had just joined a finance department. The finance director had put all over LinkedIn that he was out at an event. Let's face it, we do these things, you know, it's how we network, it's how we make people aware of what our company is doing and being involved in. And he sent an email saying, I've had a great idea come through whilst I'm at this event. Can you go and get me £1,000 worth of gift vouchers from this shop? There was nobody else in to check or ask. She had no access to the company credit card or anything of any sort, but wanting to prove that she can follow instructions and be a good employee and not question her director, she went and purchased £1,000 worth of gift vouchers on her personal credit card. So as much as we can all sit there and say, well, I wouldn't do that, I'd ask questions. Not everybody thinks in that way or would feel comfortable asking somebody more senior as to whether they actually did really mean what they've asked them to do. So just a couple of things there to bear in mind and to think about. So another thing that we get fairly regularly from, you know, sort of SMEs is, well, I don't do IT. Why is this relevant to me? The reality is you will still have online banking. You will still do social media. And you are likely to have a CRM of some description. And all of that needs forethought into how you are protecting your organisation when you use these things. And that's the tip of the iceberg. You know, many of you may have other systems and facilities that you use, or you've purchased Microsoft 365 and you think that Microsoft does everything that you need in the background. All the configurations are there, all the security is there. And it isn't, unfortunately. You do have responsibility to actually go through those configurations and make sure that they're correct for your company. And just to give you an idea, from the latest cyber breaches report that the government run, they go out every 12 months and they try to look at what organisations have had breaches and what that looks like, and they break it down into, there's all sorts of metrics that you can look at, looking into sectors, charities, but I've just gone with, you know, sort of businesses overall and size of organisation. And you might look at that and think, well, actually, it doesn't look like there's been a significant increase at all over the last 12 months. In fact, it looks like it's reduced. Why is that? And actually, it's happening so often now. Smaller organisations aren't bothering to report it because it takes them a while to report it. Therefore, we're still not getting quite an accurate enough picture of what's really going on out there. So I really would encourage you to report it. The other factor is particularly when you're looking at micro and small businesses, the infrastructure is not even in place in the first instance to say whether you've had a breach or not and be able to identify whether you've had a breach or not. So again, that's another impact on some of the figures that we look at. But why is it so easy? Why is phishing the main attack vector? And it's because only 18% of staff ever receive any sort of training in relation to phishing and what to look out for. And it's got to be effective training as well. I think we've all been there, you know, where you get an online e-package, don't you, and just press buttons to get through it. And you use a little bit of common sense and you might get through. But we need something that actually helps staff understand the risk and the potential cost of falling foul to some of these things. And it's not about scaring people. It's not about, you know, bashing them over the head with a big stick. It's actually just about going through the process and giving them the tools and knowledge to help support your organisation. And this is why cyber security really is for everybody to consider. And there's lots of things. You'll be glad I'm not going to talk through that slide. It's very busy and there's a lot on there. But we talk about, don't we, the reputational risk. Perhaps you're going to get fines from the ICO or other regulatory bodies that relate to your sector. Are you going to have to pay a ransom or negotiate anything to recover? Is your business actually going to go under as a result of what's happened? Knights of Old, 150-year-old company who's been going, they're just off us on East Midlands. And because somebody's password wasn't very strong, the entire organisation no longer exists. And it's about building that resilience in for you and your staff. So we talk about the reputational stuff, we talk about the financial implications of going through, getting yourself back up and running. But what about the data that you've had stolen? It's a name and address, right? It's an email. It's not really that important. But the reality of it is, I'm sure many of you on here wouldn't want to put your name and your home address and your email into the chat on this webinar for everybody to have access to. And that's what's happening. Now, consider the fact that you have perhaps for whatever reason had to leave your home, you've had to leave your environment behind, and you've spent the last 12 to 18 months rebuilding your life. Your children have got a new school, making new friends. You've finally found a new job. You've got somewhere new to live. You're just settling down and starting to think that, you know, you don't have to look over your shoulder every 5 minutes. You know, you can start that anxiety starting to reduce. And the police come and knock on the door and say, I'm really sorry, but you're no longer safe. That is the reality of people's personal data sometimes. And so reframing it and thinking about, actually, it's not just a name and address. And this is why we need to really consider what we do and how we do it. So we try to promote that cybersecurity is actually, it's everybody's responsibility. But where do we start? It's a really complex topic, or people think it is. And it's a little bit like the old, how do you eat an elephant? And it's just a little piece at a time. But sometimes where to start can be that difficult process, because where you may need to start could be very different to another company and another place that they may start. We regularly talk to people who, you know, we'll have a chat with them and we'll say, okay, have you got an admin profile on your laptop? And they don't know what that is, but their kids have got their profile on their work laptop. And it's about actually understanding, let's just do some real basic, easy, quick wins to start you on that journey. And this is a little bit where cyber resilience centres can come in and support you. So we are actually one of 9 around the whole of the UK. And all of us, like I say, are police-led, like we are within the West Midlands. We don't sell anybody anything. We are purely there to support you on your journey. So I like to say we're a bit of a couch to 5K. It doesn't matter where you are within that journey. We've actually got something for everybody. And if you're at 5K, we've got a few little bits to help support you get to the 10K stage. So what we do is it's all free. As I say, it's completely funded by the government. And this is why we try to get the messaging out that we exist. The government have given us this money. And I want to make sure that that comes out to you, it comes out to the SMEs, and you have the ability to tap into those resources. So over the course of 12 months, you will receive approximately 16 emails, and they will outline what you can expect from us. and they will contain live links to the National Cybersecurity Centre guidance. So we're not, again, making anything up or saying this is what we think. This is actually government guidance that directly comes from them to support the SME community. So we'll talk about things like the Small Business Guide, Exercise in a Box, the new Cyber Action Toolkit that's available, how to look after social media channels. But if I send that all out in one email, you're probably going to do what I would do, flag it, say I'll get to it later, and you don't really get there. So what we tried to do is actually break it down into small, manageable chunks for you, so you get them a little bit at a time to navigate through. We'll talk to you about how to report fraud and then cybercrime. The links all come through to you, like I say, and we'll discuss some of the other funded services that are available and hopefully get you on that journey to working towards the Cyber Essential framework and hopefully achieving that certification, which if you're tendering for government contracts and things like that quite regularly, you will actually be asked for. Alongside all of that, we offer you specific conversations to talk about you and your organisation. Where are you? What are your specific next steps? And we do that on a one-to-one basis. We book you in for a half-hour session. But, you know, if you need another half an hour and another half an hour after that, well, then we will look to support you with that and keep you moving through that journey so you can take real-time action. You also get a direct link to book yourself into a security awareness training session as well. So I mentioned that we've got some other funded services, and this is where, like I say, the government have given us this extra money. And what we do is we work with our local university students because we want to provide a talent pipeline throughout the UK as well and keep all of the skills that they're learning within our region, but get them benefiting the SMEs. So students go through a whole application, interview and vetting process and have to have a right to work in the UK. Any work that they undertake is fully contractual with NDAs in place, and they have to provide a commercially standard product. So they are mentored and monitored throughout the entire delivery. So we don't just let students go randomly through your system. The mentor will ensure that they have the skills and knowledge, and they quality assure and check all of the work that comes out as well. So some of the services, again, I'm not going to talk through all of those. We only have half an hour, but a real significant one is security awareness training. Or we can do a web assessment. If you've set up your own website or you've had somebody do it on your behalf, well, let's just check it for you. Are there any vulnerabilities in there? And if there are, how do you navigate through those? What are your next steps in order to plug those vulnerabilities? And I mentioned Microsoft 365. So again, we can do a config review. So we can check for reviews, any weaknesses that may be in there and show you how you can continue to improve those. The students get paid for the work that they get done as well, which is always, as you can imagine, from a student perspective, welcome. But the SME, you are able to receive funded services that you perhaps can't afford to pay other organisations to do on your behalf. And we would do that to continue your ongoing journey and learning and help make you more resilient. And as I said to you, we do really advocate for cyber essentials. I will touch on it very slightly. I know we've got a little bit of time because I've tried to whiz through and leave more time for some of the other speakers too. Cyber Essentials is a really useful certification. There are two levels. And the first level is a little bit like a self-certification. It will ask you a standard set of questions that are based on some framework principles. And if you provide them with the relevant questions, answers to the questions even, what they will do is they will provide you with a Cyber Essentials certification, which does include free cyber insurance for eligible small businesses as well. I guess it's a little bit like an insurance. you get a new house, don't you? You have to have your house insurance, and you will give them they say to you, have you got doors? Have you got windows? Have you got locks? And you go, yes, yes, yes. And then they get to the question where they say, okay, so have you got an 8-point locking system, a 16-point locking system? And you go, I don't know, I've just moved into the house. But these are all the questions that they will ask you. The second level is Cyber Essentials Plus, and that is where you provide them the responses to the question set, and they will then go through and work with you to check that if you say, yes, I've got multi-factor authentication on everything that we use and access, they will go through and they will check that you do actually have that in place. And they will say, brilliant, you've passed. Yes, you have locked the doors and windows like you said you have. Or they'll say, well, actually, that bathroom window, you've left it open, so you need to go and re-secure that. We know that people who have Cyber Essentials are 92% less likely to make a claim on their cyber insurance. So it really does have some weight to it, and it is now starting to be mandated to work with many large organisations and local government. I have noted some questions in the chat popping up, and I will get to those when we finish, which is why I'm doing a little bit of a whiz through to leave a little bit of time for you. We also work with our regional and organised crime partners within the policing world. As you can imagine, I'm a police officer, so we can tap into that resources. And we've got lots of different things that we can look to do. So on top of the security awareness training sessions that Cyber Resilience Centre can do, we've got interactive escape rooms. We've got discussions around board management. So, it can be an interactive exercise. How does this work? If this was going to happen in your organisation and computer says no, what are you going to do and how are you going to recover? So I'm going to move into a little bit of what else that you can do, supply chain, a couple of links for you, and we'll move on to looking at the chat questions. So we'd really, really recommend employee training. And I say training, but actually the practical application. And that sounds really silly, but a lot of people goes, I've got a policy, it's in the employee handbook. How many of you have read every single company policy and handbook, but also understand it? Because it's great saying, yeah, we've got MFA. The Uber hack, they had MFA on their system. They managed to find somebody's username and password to the system, and they kept going through and sending them, they had the approval deny, not an OTP, a one-time password. And it kept coming up, approve or deny access, and they were on leave. So they just kept deny, deny, deny. Many hours later of pressing deny, 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 they got fed up, just made an assumption that somebody in the office was doing something that needed access and pressed approve. So if this happens when people are not at work, what do you want them to do? What's your process going to be? How are they going to safeguard everything? So just some sort of food for thought really about practical applications. MFA, we know the real basics of having good password hygiene, and MFA can make a huge difference. And instant response planning, it really is a case of when it happens to you, what are you going to do and how are you going to recover? It's no longer a case of, well, if it happens, I'll manage. When it happens, how are you going to recover? Because your ability to respond and recover is what is likely to actually save your organisation. And board responsibility. We know that having somebody at that senior level who understands and has responsibility for the threat, understands the risk of cyber attacks, can really impact the resilience of an organisation. Microsoft did a really great report actually, probably about 18 months ago now, and something like 30% of organisations are resilient at best. And the reason they were resilient is because everything that they did, they gave thought to the risk element of cybercrime, new technology and best practices, and it was all rolled in and considered part and parcel of their business management. So we mentioned supply chain earlier on. And at some point, as I said, you and all your partners are going to experience an incident. So if you have your own supply chain, do you have an agreement with them that if they have an attack, they're going to tell you? If you have an attack, how are you going to tell them? What are your processes? So by having dedicated onboarding processes, different consultations, access to the NCSC material, it can really help some of the risk management decisions that people make. I've put the link on there to the Southeast supply chain processes. There's another link on the other slide, actually. The reason I put that on there is because our website is being redone and it's due to relaunch again in the next few weeks, and it's not on our website at the moment. It is on theirs, so it's just a way of you being able to access it, but it is from the Cyber Resilience Centre network that we will all be using. So I am going to pause there so that we've got time to go to the questions, but a couple of QR codes there that I'd really encourage you to use, please. One is to sign up to receive the free guidance from the CRC, because why would you not? You know, it gives you that free resource library that you can just keep going back to and actioning when you want to. But also the NCSC have recently launched a cyber action toolkit. And this is actually a really great way. When you go, you can register your organisation in there, and it will take you through a series of questions and actions that you can take in order to, again, boost the resilience of how you do business. And good old Have I Been Ponned at the bottom is a good one. Many people don't know about this. It's a website that you can go to and put in your email. In fact, you can put in anybody's email address, so personal, business, and it will tell you if you've been subjected to a breach. And if you have, it will tell you the date of the breach, the organisation that had the breach, and the likely information that was taken as a result of that breach. So it could be name, email, address, passwords, things like that. So for any of you who joined Facebook way back when, and good old Farmville, I think it was called, Zynga's on there right at the bottom. MyFitnessPal is also on there. X, Twitter, X, I always never know which one to call it anymore. That was on there. But what you can do, again, we're not going to keep checking it every other week or every month, are we? We'll forget. We've got busy lives and businesses to run. But what you can do is actually register your email address. And what it will do is when it identifies your address in a breach, it will notify you. And it's great because that came up for me. I was on the X list, and all I did was instantly go into my account, change my password, make sure all the settings were as they should be, and it takes literally seconds to do, instead of getting a big list and trying to work your way through. I think the highest number of breaches that I've heard of so far is 50 something. So hopefully none of you are in that realm. So I'll stop sharing now so that I can see the question set.
Oh, Michelle, thank you so much. That was so eye-opening. As a small business with Cyber Essentials, you imagine that you do a bit and it sort of shuts the door to everybody, and it really doesn't. So that's some really great thinking and great resources in there. Do you want me to go through the questions, Michelle, and you can answer them?
Yeah, I think I've just managed to open them. So
Cool.
I've got Kerry. Do you think that funders should expect providers to be putting the cost of Cyber Essentials Plus insurance into budgets? As I understand, it's extremely expensive. And that's a really difficult one, and that only you can answer, really. They have to say, we are securing our supply chain. Our way of securing our supply chain is these are our expectations of you. If you want to go and do that so that you can put in for the bid, well, that's fine. If you don't want to do it, that is a business call for you. So that, unfortunately, that's just the way life is. Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus depends on the size of your organisation, will depend on the size. So the smaller the organisation, the smaller the cost of it. Sometimes it's not necessarily the certification that causes you the cost, it's the remedial work that you need to do in order to achieve the certification. So I think that's something that needs to be worked through. What I would say is, if you have got remedial work that you need to do, actually please plan that into your next 12 months of development, because that is what will develop your cyber posture as a company anyway. And it secures your organisation, which is what we all want to happen, really. Cyber Essentials does come with a certain level of cyber insurance itself. And there is a way that if you think the amount that you have through the certification isn't enough, then you can actually ask them to up that level of insurance, and they will have a conversation with you as to the costings involved in that as well. So definitely shop around, have a look. It can be expensive, but it will depend on your organisation and what you actually have in place. The less you have in place, the more expensive it's going to be. The more you have in place, the less risk you are, therefore the less your insurance is going to cost. So hopefully in a roundabout way, that kind of answers that question for you, Kerry. So Caroline, is the landscape rapidly moving? So does an organisation need ongoing engagement to stay up to date, or is there a newsletter where we could stay in the loop? And that's a really great question, Caroline, because it does move very rapidly, particularly when the rate technology changes. Literally it is so fast pacing, and the way people do things and the sort of scams and things like that really do change. The CRC sends out a monthly newsletter, so if there is something going on within our region, we make sure that we let people know about it. We also have LinkedIn channels where, again, if there is something coming up that we're starting to see, we will share that to make that available to our audiences. So please feel free to follow that, because that is what we see from a governmental level coming through. So again, I hope that answered the question, but happy for any others if people have them. And thanks, Leah. Yes, you guys work with the CRC, which is fab.
Brilliant. Thank you ever so much, Michelle. And some of these questions have been fantastic. So thank you for the engagement so far as well from everyone who's attending. Karen, I'm going to come over to you now. You've got some slides to talk to us about the Federation of Small Businesses. So over to you.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to try and share my screen. Hopefully it will work fine, and you should be able to see my slides. Just give you that one. Right, I will maximize those. So give me a thumbs up. We got that? Yep. Perfect. Okay. All right. Well, thanks very much for that, Jill. And Michelle, our paths have crossed quite a bit over the years in terms of the work the FSB does. So for those of you who haven't heard of the FSB, with the Federation of Small Businesses, we're a national membership organisation, and we are truly national. We have offices in Westminster, Belfast, Glasgow and Cardiff. So we cover the whole of the UK. We've got about 150,000 members across the UK. And I'm one of the team of, we've just newly changed our job titles, so bear with me a second. I'm the Regional Business and Stakeholder Manager, and I actually am an interloper today because I am covering for my colleague Lee Osborne, who has responsibility for Coventry, Warwickshire and Solihull, but I have responsibility for Staffordshire and the West Midlands and Shropshire and a bit of Derbyshire. But I did say a cover for him because he can't get out something he's had us on today. Just before I go on to what I've got to say on these slides, I've only got one main slide actually, which will give you all the information you need about the FSB, but just wanted to cover off the two subjects that we've talked about this morning, and the presentations from both Jill and from Michelle are absolutely brilliant. I do a lot of work around procurement. I do a lot of work around cybercrime, online fraud, business crime, and also on supply chains, getting paid on time, all of that kind of stuff. So I think it's really, great for us to see this kind of sort of support available, because, as a small business, I've been with the FSB for 20 years, so I've met lots and lots of you, and you're all things to all men. You're goods in, goods out, payroll, HR, customer complaints, you name it, all in one day. So some of this stuff can quite easily slip through the net. So helping our understanding that is absolutely brilliant. But just touching on the two things in terms of FSB work that we do, if we look to procurement first of all, and again, Jill, your presentation was spot on. One of the things that I come across a lot is people that want to be working with public sector organisations in their supply chains, or actually directly with them, but actually don't really understand how to get into it, don't know where there's contract contracts are and maybe aren't quite bid ready enough for it. So we do a lot of work around that. And what you've just talked about today is amazing, because it means that, you know, it's giving people the opportunity to get their ducks in a row before they actually start looking for these contracts. And you've outlined, you know, quite clearly where they can be found. But just some headline figures, actually. Oh, let me go back. Wait a minute. Just some headline figures in terms of our procurement work. We have a hot off the press procurement report, which actually was only published at the very end of last year. And some of the headlines from that would be really interesting. And I'll share this, Jill, with you perhaps, and you could circulate to the attendees. But what it's showing us there is things like 43% of the people that responded to our survey said that they felt that unreasonable eligibility criteria prevented them from joining the supply chains. And actually, sometimes when we drill down to that, it's not that it's unreasonable. It may be that it's just not quite, the understanding may not be there, and we need to help people to sort of get that bid readiness in there. And actually only 31% have won tenders. And I think that goes to your point, Jill, about understanding how to put the best bid in. So thanks very much for all of that. And on the cybersecurity side, we've got a report that's a year or so old now, but again, it highlights, Michelle, some of the stuff we've talked about around small businesses. You know, 56% invested more in cybersecurity and anti-fraud in the previous 2 years, which was a much higher figure than prior to that. But 1.8 million small businesses said that they experienced fraud in the last 2 years. That's a massive figure. And again, I've got a report I can share with you on that. So just to sort of give you a highlight of some of the stuff that you know, that we've done in terms of working on cybersecurity and procurement. Right, I keep moving my thing because I've had a piece of paper on my keyboard. So there we go. Okay, I'm going to give you a very, very quick overview of what FSB does. I said we're a national organisation. We are a lobbying organisation, and we've done an awful lot of work around trying to sort of help level the playing fields and make our business landscape as best it can be for small businesses. And we continue that work in Westminster and in the devolved areas. But aligned to that, behind the scenes, we are also, we offer a suite of robust member benefits. And I'm going to literally canter through these because I don't have very long. But if FSB members are able to access a legal protection scheme, which affords them up to £100,000 of cover per claim. So that means if you are sued for any particular reason, and we find that you haven't deliberately broken the law and you haven't done anything deliberately wrong, we will take up that case for you, and per claim up to £100,000 can be paid in order to settle a claim that might be made against you. In the same way, if you're an employer, we offer employment protection. That includes all the employment contracts, all of the notices, the employee handbooks, and Michelle, it also includes notices around cybersecurity and all of the training that people would expect their employees to do. And again, if you're taken to an employment tribunal and you are maybe a claim for unfair dismissal or constructive dismissal, if you haven't acted illegally, we will allocate a barrister to you, and we would pay up to £100,000 per claim, plus any award that's awarded to the employee. Then the same goes for tax investigation. If you're unlucky enough to be singled out by HMRC for a tax investigation, either a full investigation or an aspect inquiry, and we take that on for you as well, and we will pay up to £100,000 per claim. And it's worth noting there as well, if you are singled out for an investigation, the likelihood is if you have an accountant, you will have to pay your accountant to supply the records that are going to be asked for, and that can be extremely expensive. So that's all included within that claim. We will pay that for you. The FSB Legal and Business Hub is absolutely amazing. I spend a lot of time in there. That's where you get behind the website and you get into the member hub. I practiced law before I joined the FSB, so I can tell you the amount of money that saves you if you can get into that hub and take any of those 1,500 legally written documents that are written by our law firm. Will save you an absolute arm and a leg when it comes to weighing that up against actually having a lawyer to draft those documents for you. So there's a lot of really good stuff in there for you to use as well. Jury service, any of us can be subject to that. You could get called up for jury service at any point in time, and we would pay up to £250 per day for either you or your employee if they are called into jury service and expected to actually serve. PR and crisis management, and again going back to Michelle's point, this is really important because I think you talked about CRM in your presentation, Michelle, and so the PR and crisis management is here for anybody who might suffer a PR crisis. So it could be Things around, we see a lot of this actually on things like Trustpilot and TripAdvisor, where there's reputational damage perhaps to your business as a result of somebody putting an unpleasant comment on there or an unpleasant review. Our guys will delve down into that and look at exactly where that came from and how it happened. And there is £10,000 worth of cover for either your reputational damage or any reputational damage that is experienced by a third party connected with your business. Health and safety, we have ex-health and safety inspectors who actually provide that support. I know all of this is 24/7, and they will be able to help you. There's also some guides and documents in the hub. You can do a self-assessment on your own health and safety within your business, and it will show you up red, amber and green as to where you may need to sort of make some improvements in your business, and then you can get that advice to make those improvements. FSB debt recovery, I mentioned earlier about late payments. I do a lot of work around this. I run masterclasses and seminars around getting paid on time and in full. And for the most part, again, the businesses I come into contact with, the reason that maybe they have a debt problem, not always, but quite often, is because often they don't have their back office procedures in place. And sometimes I have people coming to me saying, I know I'm owed this money. I don't know how long it's been outstanding. I'm not really sure what to do now. So we look at how you can get those procedures in place and make sure that they are as robust as they can be. But aligned to that, if you do end up in a debt recovery situation with a customer or client, we have a really good sort of backup for that to help you get through. And in the last 12 months alone, we've helped our FSB members recover over £5 million worth of debt. So that's how useful that service is. There's 3 offers of business banking that include free business banking, depending on what type of industry you're in and how much cash you handle, and also cashback opportunities as well. FSB funding platform, what these guys don't know about finding access to funding for business isn't worth knowing. They're complete experts, and they will do a one-stop shop. So you fill in one form and they will sort of look at the market and see what's the best offer for what you're looking for. It may not be your traditional banks that you're used to dealing with. It might be something that's a little bit off piece. It could be an investor, angel investment, or it could be something else, but they will look at that. And if you are signed up to FSB funding platform, you can access unlimited free credit scores. And going back to your debt recovery issue, I always recommend that people do a credit check on a client or a customer before they're prepared to issue any credit to them. A credit score is not quite a credit check, but it'll give you an idea of whether or not they've got a good credit sort of score, and that's unlimited. And likewise with FSB insurance services, these are experts at FSB in insurance for small businesses. It's owned by the FSB and only works with FSB members. And again, if you are signed to them, they will give you 10 free credit checks a year. That's your full check to tell you whether they're good for it, if you're actually going to take on a new client or a customer. FSB training modules, we've got over 700 CPD accredited training modules. Now, Michelle, again, going back to what you talked about earlier, there's also some training modules in there around being GDPR compliant. And I'm a massive advocate for trying to demonstrate that you have trained yourself, that you have trained your staff. And if you are in a situation where you are probably aware, you will have to report yourself to the Information Commissioner's office within 72 hours of being made aware of a breach that may well not be your fault. But it goes a fair way to the ICO to saying, look, we've trained ourselves, we've trained our staff. It's happened, it was an accident or something else happened, whatever. But they do sort of look at that and go, well, you've done your best. I'm not saying it eradicates the problem, but it certainly helps. So the training modules that are in there are really useful. FSB payments, if you are a business that needs a mobile card terminal, we've negotiated with Till by NatWest some extremely competitive rates that will be far better than I suspect you might get on the high street for your costs for that. And that's because we've got the buying power of a large number of members, so we can negotiate those costs down. Payroll and pensions, can't get away from this. It's something that needs to be done if you employ. And so we have experts that will help you with that as well. And the Making Tax Digital app, we actually introduced this when VAT registered businesses had to go into quarterly reporting. But of course, if you are a self-employed individual and have rental properties in particular, if your turnover, not your profit, your turnover exceeds £50,000 in the last tax year, so from April this year, you'll be quarterly reporting as well. So that is an extremely useful tool to have in your armoury. We've got a great healthcare offer. Don't know if anyone's tried to get a GP appointment recently. They are rare, like rocking horses, they say. But basically, they will offer you a 24/7 online and over the phone consultation with a GP. GP, and we also have a brilliant occupational health offer as well in there for you and your employees. We do a lot of events and networking. We run about 160 events across the UK over the course of a year, but we also are running a series of boot camps. These are business boot camps. They are all-day events. They're really useful. The next one up for you guys, if you're local to the Solihull area, which I suspect you are, is going to be the Coventry one, which is on the 2nd of March at Coombe Abbey, and I'm going to put the details in the chat box for you. It's a free to attend all-day event, and you will pick up lots of information from guest and expert speakers on a whole range of business issues. I'm also running one in Shropshire on the 13th of May, which I'm still building the information on that at the moment, but I'll pop that link in there for you as well. And then just to say, in terms of the FSB website, all of that, the stuff that I just described for you there is what FSB members will access behind the website. But actually, if you get onto fsb.org.uk, and I'd strongly advise you to do that, and click on the resources button at the top, there are some brilliant resources in there that are completely free for you to access. There's some great business guides and things in there that can really help you to get your back office procedures in place and to actually sort of move your business forward. And you don't have to be a member to access those, but if you are, then you get access to all of the stuff that I have just talked about. So I am now going to pop that on there. As I say, Lee is your local contact. I'm just covering for him today. There's his details there, but also I'm very happy to chat to anybody, and I do cover parts of the West Midlands as well. Again, I'll send these slides out, so you don't need to worry about taking those details down. But if there's any queries you have around FSB activity or FSB work we do for small businesses or the benefits that I've just described, please do feel free to give me a call. And I think I might have got through that in record time. I'm not sure. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen.
Thank you, Karen. I mean, that was so helpful. As always, that was brilliant. Lots of information. There's a couple of questions. We are just really tight on time. So
yeah, I'll do as quick as I can.
Yeah, no, there's one question. What I'm going to suggest is one of our attendees would really like to have a chat with you. So you've popped your details on the screen. It will come out in the slide deck as well.
Yeah.
I'm just going to suggest that Mark and you connect, just have a chat about that fraud protection stuff. So that would be great.
And I should have added as well, actually, I also run one-to-one virtual business support sessions as well. So I can do a 45-minute online and just look at your business generally and see where we might be able to help you and signpost you. So again, my details will be on that slide when it comes out.
Brilliant, thank you. And there was one other question around which organisation provides the accreditation for CPD training, the continued professional development.
Oh, I'll have to come back to you on that. I'm not sure without looking into it. I'll put that in the response to you, Jill.
Brilliant. Thank you ever so much. Thank you, Karen. So we've just got about 10 minutes left, and we've got two more people. So we've got no more PowerPoints. So you'll be pleased to know all the PowerPoint bit is done. But I'd like to invite Samantha Frampton from Solihull Chambers to have a quick chat with us, and then we'll finish up the day with John. Saving the best to last, aren't we, John? That's what we're doing.
Thanks, Jill. And listen, thanks for this morning inviting me along to the webinar. Quick couple of minutes from me. I'm Samantha Frampton. I'm head of Solihull Chamber of Commerce. We form one of 9 divisions that make up the Greater Birmingham Chambers of Commerce, and that includes other divisions, like we've got a global and international division, we have a young professionals division, and our geographical areas, which covers Sutton Coldfield, Lichfield, Tamworth, Cannock, Burton, Chase, Solihull and Birmingham. So hopefully I've covered all the areas. We're here a bit similar to FSB. Probably, I'd love to say we could provide all those documents. We don't do, but I think next level, if you're an SME and you've been in business for a good 2 or 3 years, you've got that under your belt. So we're here to help boost your brand. We can help expand your network, build valuable partnerships, and obviously help have your voice heard through our QBR surveys, through our networking and events. We're affiliated to the British Chambers of Commerce, so all chambers are affiliated to the British Chambers, which gives us a voice at local government at Westminster when it comes to lobbying on our members' behalf. We are all sectors. We cover all different types of members, from micro up to large organisations, the likes of JLR in the area. My role and my purpose, my day role, is to just look after Solihull businesses, of which we've got just over 200 in membership. And all our networking events, and when we put anything on for our members, we lean on our members to do that. So for instance, we've got an AI and a Cyber Essentials event coming up shortly in February, where we will work using Hubtel IT, because I can see Leah on the call, and View AI, another member, to present a workshop, some training and some top tips and that to our members as well. So we're all sectors, all business sizes. We're here for networking. We do over 100 events a year within Solihull, just over 250 within the Greater Birmingham. Events, regardless of which division you join, you have access to all of those events. A list of benefits are on our website, free HR legal helpline, other benefits as well for businesses and for their members. I think the biggest one, we're an organisational membership. So regardless of how many members, employees that you have within your business, what that one membership covers all. So that's a great one for opportunities for the networking and events, and obviously for businesses for personal development as well. There's a lot. We're a big pick and mix, a bit like the FSB. There's a lot of support out there for businesses, and whether whoever you access it through, whether it's the chambers, whether it's through the council, whether it's through FSB, as businesses access it, all I can say is it's there for you. Some of it is free. Just make the most of it and access what's available for you online. And Jill, you'll share my details, no doubt, obviously after the call. But thank you for the opportunity to speak to everybody.
No worries. Thank you, Samantha. A couple of things. Firstly, I did just tell a fib. So John has some slides, so we're not done with PowerPoint at all. So I take that back completely. Thank you, Sam. That was brilliant. For what it's worth, Go for Growth. We are members of Federation of Small Businesses. I'm a personal member of FSB. I've been an England Policy Unit rep for FSB, and I've been a member of a number of chambers of commerce. And they are both super organisations, regardless of where you are on your journey, how mature you are, what you're looking for. The growth hubs locally are all brilliant. The big message today, and John's going to really plough this home for us, I think, is that there's lots of support out there, and lots of free support and lots of low-cost support. So this doesn't have to cost the earth to get to the right people. So that's the main message for today. As small businesses, it can often feel like we're alone, and it'd be quite a lonely place and quite isolating. There's a lot of layers to what we're trying to do, the things that we're asked for. But there's help there from chambers, from FSB, from the Cyber Resilience Centre, from growth hubs, and from Go for Growth. So tap into any of it and all of it, as much or as little as you would like. And John, if I hand over to you, if you want to share your screens, you can take us to the end of the session.
I will do my very best. Apologies, everybody. I will whiz through these because some of you may already be very familiar with what a growth hub is and what its purpose is really in terms of supporting businesses. Just to kind of mention, it would be remiss of me not to do so, is that the Business Growth West Midlands service is delivered right across the West Midlands. So the 7 local authorities all adhere to the same approach to supporting businesses, which is essentially completely independent and impartial. We act as that central point for any kind of business related support. And every day that we'll probably average 40 to 50 inquiries a week. And they can range from anybody that's looking to start in business or is looking to grow their business in some way, shape or another. I've got a team of 16 business advisors and account managers that cover a whole raft of different elements of what it just takes to run a successful business. And one of the reasons why we exist, I guess, is because I completely endorse everything that's been said today. And there are some amazing support provision out there. One of the problems that we've got, though, is it is quite big. And this screen just illustrates just some of those support resources that are out there. And our job really is to work with you on an independent and impartial basis to understand your business, where you're looking to get to, and then to provide for you a tailored, what we call action plan. So that results in, you talked about this is a barrier to your growth, or these are some opportunities that you'd like to explore, and we can present that to you in hopefully a very meaningful way that is a human being speaking to you, and we can understand your business and support you through that growth journey, whatever that might be. I won't go on too much about this. It's just that I thought that one of the things that we've spoke about today was about that sustainability, the energy efficiency, the net zero. It is a strength area, shall we say, in that we've got 2 account managers that really specialise in this area. So if it is, again, something that you're particularly interested in, the best starting point is have a conversation with us. We can look at everything from premises to people to marketplaces to cyber security, whatever that might be. And as I said, just help you with perhaps looking at some options for how we can get you to that place that you're wanting to go to. The Business Growth West Midlands side of things, so they have a workshop and a seminar program that covers, and just the bullet points down there. There's many more than that, but they are delivered through a team of expert practitioners, and will take you through some of those key fundamentals about what it takes to grow your business around these kind of technologies. I've just put this slide again. You'll get a copy of all these slides. The best way to get in touch with us really is to click this hyperlink here, which is register a support request. That comes straight into our CRM. We spoke about CRMs quite often today, but that will go straight into there, and it will be assigned to one of our account managers or business advisors. They'll get in touch with you, organise to have a conversation with you, whether that's in person or on Teams, and then work with you to deliver that tailored action plan. So I appreciate that was quite a lot to cover in a relatively short space of time, but hopefully the key messages were easy to follow on that one. So that's essentially where we are as a growth hub and what we actually deliver. So
Brilliant.
Hopefully that's been helpful.
Thank you, John. Thank you, everyone. So we have made it to time. If there are any questions that you still want to ask and we haven't got time for today, please do feel free to pop them over to me on email. We'll send out PDF versions of all the slide deck and a recording today. I know there's been quite a bit going on in the chat as well. So thank you to everybody that's taken time out to present today and to chat to you. But also thank you to all the businesses that have joined us this morning. Time is one of our most precious commodities and we don't have a ton of it. So I'm always really grateful for anyone taking time out of their busy calendars just to come and listen. And hopefully it's been useful and helpful. And hopefully we'll all see each other again soon. Have a good rest of your Tuesday, everyone. Thank you again, and we'll see you all soon. Thank you so much.
Bye now.
See you later.